central banks want to rein everything in and have even more control over the economy. Everyone would have an account with a ledger with the central bank. Privacy's gone, anonymity is gone. Digital identity is not just your name, your birth certificate, your things about you, but they've also got things about your skill sets, your behaviors, your access to the internet. In this new Web 3.0 internet will be via this digital identity. You'll use that to get into the metaverse. You'll use that to go online. We're moving towards maybe a China light, Chinification. There's 300 plus UK government is signed up to a digital identity scheme. So even if you open a new company, you got to go through this. Even if you start renting DBS checks, you got to go through this. Everything's going through this digital identity now. It's building up a profile on you. The whole financial system will go through that. Even if there are drastic changes coming through, even if they're going to rip out the economic system and put in a new technocracy where we'll all be plugged into the matrix, we'll have to do it all together. But I've always said, I've got this little thing that always goes into my mind. It's like, maybe we have to assimilate, maybe we'll have to become AI so we can get into the system and kill it. That's the only way we're going to do it is to let the truth shine, and elevate our species.
Welcome to another episode of the Staying Free podcast. In this episode, I spoke with Indi, also known as Sikh for Truth on Twitter. Indi is someone who many of you will already know. He's been very much at the front and centre of the freedom movement for the past 2.5 years, and he's a writer and editor at Truth Talk UK. We talked about everything from Indi's culture and background as a Sikh, to holistic health, to vaccine passes, CBDCs, and digital IDs. I'm really grateful to Indi for coming on and speaking on the podcast. I know that doing media appearances isn't normally his thing, and he's more of a writer and tends to stick to that. But I really enjoyed this conversation. Indi has a lot of insight generally, and it's great to have the opportunity to talk to him in a different format and have him share some of his ideas in a longer form. If you enjoy the episode, please give it a like and a share on social media. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, then please give it a 5-star rating in whichever podcast app you're using. If you're new here, welcome. Give the podcast a subscribe for future episodes, and also go back and check some of the previous episodes. I'm sure there'll be a lot there that will interest you. And if you'd like to donate to the podcast, there's 2 ways to do that. The first is to give a Bitcoin tip, and the second is to buy me a coffee. Links for those will be in the description. Any donations you do give are hugely appreciated and will go directly towards the costs of running the show. All right, on to the episode.
Actually, my Twitter handle, it was Seek for Truth. I came up with that. I didn't think much of it. But it was actually, but my name on Twitter was In Truth We Trust. And I kept that for a long time. And then I just put my display name the same as my handle. But yeah, over the sort of past, certainly since March, our friend Rick Munn from TNT Radio, yeah, he calls me Sikh, but then he calls me Indi, so that's fine. That's my name, Indi. INDI.
Cool. So we were just saying before the recording began about us both kind of getting to know each other a bit via the protests in the UK.
Yeah,
I've had this question in my mind for a long time, and you seem to be the right person to ask. There seemed to be a really disproportionate representation of Sikhs at those protests. Like the Sikh community seemed to really come out for it. Is that something you've noticed, or you can kind of shed a bit of light on?
Well, I'm only presuming. I think the Sikh religion in the UK is probably one of the smallest religions. I think in Leicester, where I live, I did some research a couple of weeks ago because there was some other stuff going on in Leicester. We only represent 4.6% of the population here, which is only about 25,000 people out of 360k. So it's a small population. So if you can imagine that across the UK, you probably wouldn't get many Sikhs. So I think we're one of those minorities in probably the Leicester, UK, and even the world. I think it's one of the youngest religions as well. So it came out in towards the end of the sort of I think 15th century or 17th century. Don't hold me to that. My history isn't too great, but yeah, it's one of the youngest religions. But we go by the writings of our guru, which is it's the Guru Granth Sahib, which is it's a book. It's got all the writings of the 10 gurus before it, and so that's tells you how you should live. And I think always speak your truth. I think truth and the vibrational elements of truth always come out over fear and evil, and our holy book says you shouldn't be afraid, live a fearless life.
Yeah, so that's part of this. The teachings is to not live a fearful life, and to kind of always pursue truth.
Yeah. So what we pray, we say Sat Nam. Sat means truth, and Nam means the name. So the truth is the name. The truth is God. Like we pray for the truth, and not be lied to, or be blinded by possessions and material sorts of things. You've got to live a very, very pure life to become enlightened, to become so you perhaps don't come back again in reincarnation. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. On those protests, I was having a lot of like Sikh cooking, because the Sikhs seem to always bring these like carts of food with them, and then when you'd end up at the final place, it was the Sikhs who were kind of dishing out food, and it was like a donation thing. I'm not sure if you saw that, but yeah, it was just amazing. Like I love the way that people were brought together through that. Yeah,
so there are lots of Sikh charities. There's Khalsa Aid that goes into some of these sort disaster hit countries, and when there's natural disasters going on, you do see a lot of Sikh organizations from the gurdwaras getting together to help the poor, because that's what we believe in. We believe in helping others around you, like charitable causes and stuff. And one of the things that the Sikhs do is have langar, which is Langer or AR, langar, and that basically means free food. And so you can go to a gurdwara at any time and always get a free meal. So sort of eradicating poverty is one of the Sikhs key pillars, really. There shouldn't be poverty. Everyone should be able to eat at the same level also. So it doesn't matter who comes into the gurdwara. They deserve, if you're hungry, then you will be fed. But I think that goes even like like when we're going sort of intermingling with family, it's always about food. It's always centered around sort of food. What have you made to eat? So it's, and yeah, the samosas. You probably had samosas or sweets. Indian sweets. But yeah, were there a lot of Sikhs that you saw, or?
Yeah, I know. I just noticed there was a few. I don't know whether it was because there was actually a lot, or whether it's because when the Sikhs kind of were at those protests, that they kind of went all out on the like ceremonial aspects of it. Like bringing the food and like having kind of instruments, or the dress and things like that. So it could have just been that they were more noticeable, but I didn't notice that from anywhere else. I didn't notice, the Christian contingent, people who look like they've come from the church. I didn't notice even much of like a Muslim contingent or anything. It seemed to just be like Sikhs were very like noticeable to me. But I don't know.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't gone into any sort of form of activism. Like, I haven't been to a protest. I don't think, even just the local ones in my own city. I know there's been, small demonstrations and maybe sort of pockets or groups of people standing with placards and stuff like that. I don't really get involved. It's not my way of trying to influence or make things right and stuff. Like what I do is I try and share the information and try and uplift people with the truth, with information, so they can actually sort of break that down and make of it what they will. So we do like in terms of, I think it started like last year. So my first article for Truth Talk, which is run by Toby, appeared last April. So 2021 is when I.
Wait, is that Toby Young?
No, Toby Brown. So it's another Toby, but he's on Twitter as well. Toby Brown. If you look at Truth Talk, his handle is. So yeah, he was one of the sort of early people who got in touch with me on Twitter, because I started putting up threads and information and sort of I spent my time in COVID like researching, and so then I came out in April 2020, and then did some threads, and then I started writing for Truth Talk. But yeah, all the stuff that we put together, we try and sort of research the why, the when, how, the who, the three W's really. So it's just, it started with a small number of followers. So when I was originally speaking with you, when you were putting those videos up, and there's lots of protests. It's all against the COVID mandates and the vaccine passports and all that sort of stuff. That's kind of where it all started. I mean, I did cover the protests as well early on, and then writing articles and sort of linking everyone's videos and stuff and tweets together. But yeah, just that's my contribution is just to try and cover stuff that's not in the mainstream media, like try and bring over stuff from the alternative media, but also stuff from that's not really people not really focusing on, because I think the media is always like I find it quite boring and very one-sided, so I need interesting stuff to keep me going.
Oh, for sure. What were you doing before that? I want to get back to that and all of the stuff you're doing for Truth Talk and all of your kind of like online activism. But what were you doing before?
So I'm from Leicester, obviously Sikh, and I work since about 2002. I have 2002, 2012. Actually, I can't even remember now. I'm talking to you. No. From about 2006, that's right. You can probably cut that bit out. From about 2006, I've been working as a analyst, a programmer, a developer, and now I'm a business intelligence developer. So I work in I've worked in many different companies. I work within like the data teams, business intelligence teams. So we do like report writing, we do like data modeling, programming. So it's all about harnessing the data within the company, enterprise-wide data, to try and make like strategic decisions. So it is business intelligence, it is data analytics. So I'm a very sort of person who works with the business, tries to understand their processes, and then builds data models and allow them to then create statistics and KPIs and measurements to help the overall strategy of the business. So it could be efficiency savings, it could be sort of forecasting, planning, looking to into the future. So yeah, at the moment I'm working at a university. So I'm within a university department, IT department, and I work with a team of developers, which I'm a part of. So, yeah, so we develop analytics and digital transformation, sort of shaping the journey. Or helping to shape the journey.
So doing a lot of analysis and kind of projections into the future and stuff, I guess, gives you a very kind of analytical brain, and you want to kind of dive into data and figure out what's going on. So it sounds like you're pretty well set up for the kind of stuff that you're doing now with Truth Talk. So yeah, like what does your kind of journey then look like coming into 2020? Like, were you, it sounds like you weren't involved in too much activism before that, and you had some kind of a red pill moment. So can you just take us through that?
Well, I mean, Johnny, I've most of my life I've just been concentrated on obviously work and family. But from say from like 2005, like when I started my work, actually, there was always alternative media, alternative news. So my journey was mostly like from a health perspective, as also because I used to suffer quite bad with a skin condition called eczema since I was a young boy, since I was like probably less than 1 year old. So I've suffered from bleeding, scratching, dry skin, rough skin, bleeding skin for all my life, and it got quite bad when I was at university. I actually studied computer science in Leicester, and then nothing was working, so I reached out to alternative therapies. So like the Indian therapies, creams, lotions, potions. But then what really sort of it was the whole alternative treatment. So I had to change everything. Not change everything. I had to change bits of my eating habits and stress habits and stuff like this. Anything that could sort of calm and lessen the inflammation and stuff. So it was to do about food, drink, Chinese medicine, Chinese therapy, acupuncture, Chinese tea. I did that for a number of years, probably for about 10 years. So I can become, feel better about myself. But then I also started like reading up on other bits. So that the banking system, there's a person who you probably know, a conspiracy theorist called David Icke. He's actually from Leicester. He's from the same city. So I've read a couple of his books. I mean, like I like the factual stuff he writes. He used to write. There was a book called I can't remember what it's called now. It's got a blue cover, and The Truth Shall Set You Free is the book. And I really enjoyed that book. I only bought 2 of his books, but the information in there was quite powerful, because it told a story of generational families and wealth and banks, and then you get this overall arching picture of who controls the world and all this sort of stuff. So my journey started a long time ago, actually, with alternative therapies, alternative news, alternative thinking, but it was quite dormant. Like I wasn't active on social media at all. I did have an account when the whole Brexit thing started, but I had like about 50 followers, and then I probably closed it after about, I don't know, a couple of months. I opened it just to see what the MPs were talking about, and what the social media chatter, because it was, Twitter was quite new to me, and to try and get opinions that weren't on the news, I had to sort of reach out and see what my MPs, or see what these people are saying, or see what the mayor is saying about it. So that sort of got me into the news and the realm of social media and Twitter. But then no accounts, no presence, and then it wasn't up until about March 2020, April 2020 is when I created my account. Now, I'm not too sure what the reason was, but it was, first I wanted to tackle it via data, like from a data perspective, like from charts, in terms of like the figures from the ONS. So I started breaking down those quite early on, but just doing it for myself. I did start posting originally, but I then deleted all that stuff, because I realized that there were other people doing that, and doing it really well. Like COVID stats, it kind of gets a bit boring after a while, just pumping out numbers, but it was just trying to work out the impacts of lockdown originally, the numbers, the cases and stuff, because at that point people were scared to sort of leave their house. But I actually spent, and it was a nice year. I mean, it was 2020 was a pretty good summer. I did quite a lot of research into terrain theory, viruses as general, and healing. I already knew a lot of this stuff from before, from when I started researching about health. and about, fruit, vegetables, etc. But then I started reading, books like what really makes you ill. It's like a really massive book. It's about a couple of inches big. So I read that, and I also read a book by Arthur Fistenberg called The Invisible Rainbow, and it's all about electricity. Telephone signals, mobile signals and stuff, and how that can affect our bodies and health, and how that can accumulate over years. I mean, it's a short book. Definitely would recommend it. So that gave me a perspective on the pandemic, but I wasn't very, I'd already made my mind up. So I started looking into other aspects, because other people were there was lots of vocal people, and people were taking it in different ways. So people covering the protests, people were covering the vaccines. I didn't want to touch any of that. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do like a deep dive on the agenda, because I already knew it was suspect, and because what I've learned is, problem, reaction, solution. So that's all I've known since 2005. Because then if you go back a little bit, you get 9/11. Then if you go forward, and you get 7/7, and then you have lots of other things that if you really do look into them, they don't really stack up. But anyway, 2020, I wanted to do something a bit different. So I started looking into. Well, the information actually came to me in April. It was a website that was created by the Linux Foundation in conjunction with Bill Gates and some other companies, and it was a COVID pass. So in April 2020, a website was COVID credentials was created, and then in April 2020. David Icke put a meme up, COVID certificate of vaccine ID 2019, and that's when the penny dropped. That from that point onwards, I had to find out if this was actually true. So it all took me to a journey of credentials, digital identity, vaccine passports, and then we had this whole, and that went on for about 18 months. There was protests over the vaccine passports. Matt Hancock said they weren't going to. No, there's no plans for vaccine. There's no such thing. Then we find out that the contracts of being planned. They're being developed. NHS COVID app was launched, and then it's all because then it's the whole thing about, okay, so these solutions are coming in to get you access into venues and stuff, but where else is that going to lead to? So, and then we started writing articles at that point, saying that the vaccine passport is the agenda here.
Yeah. I always thought that the vaccine passport was the agenda. I know that everyone had varying kind of theories on it, but that was the thing they were clearly trying to push. And, with all of the coercion, and, we saw it multiple times. They did it again, literally like a couple of months ago. It appeared again, some kind of like government contract for, does someone want to develop a COVID vaccine ID thing? And everyone was just like, are we going to like, guys, you realize that you've got this thing on the government website, and the government were like, oh yeah, don't worry. Yeah, we'll take it down. Whoops, what a mistake. Yeah, just accidentally put up, like a £200,000 contract to develop a COVID ID, in the summer of 2022. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, and it's so obvious to the people who were following it, when you were following it really early on. I mean, I knew something for me clicked in about April, I think, of 2020. And that was the point for me. It was when they brought in masks after the thing was basically done, like after the wave was over, we were basically like on the straight and narrow, and all of a sudden they're bringing in masks like in the summer when the virus is petered out. And I was like, these people, they just want the fear to continue. They've hyped this thing up, and they're not going to let it go now. And I always knew that it would end up being a vaccine, then a vaccine pass, etc. And that's exactly where it went.
You see, Johnny, when I started doing this in the summer of 2020, so I actually put my first information thread outline the COVID pass, where it's coming from, who's developing it, what they're going to be using it for. That was in August 2020, and at that point, if you searched the term I searched the term vaccine passport, immunity passports, health pass, nothing, no one was talking about it. And I hope I was, one of those sorts, to get the ball rolling, to say, look, there's an agenda here. There's something coming in the next 15 months, but they're keeping it in reserve. It's not quite ready. So they went from the track and trace, obviously, to the COVID vaccine status, and now it's used for borders, and Canada's still got one, and they're all countries doing it all together. But when you start peeling the layers back, you realize a lot of these technology companies are following an agenda, ID 2020, and other company sort of public-private partnerships are developing this, and they're pushing it through because they're gonna build on it. It's a foundation, it's a platform, for not only for health credentials, but for other things in the future. It can be repurposed. So when I started writing, had very few followers, but then it accelerated. My trajectory of my tweets were all focused around that area, and it was sort of a niche sort of place on Twitter, and that's why I gained lots of followers and quite renowned followers of people.
And where do you think that we are now with all that stuff? Like, where do you think we are with the vaccine passports and everything? Because it seemed to me that like they kind of gave up on it like quite easily. Like they'd galvanized the public in this way where everyone was, basically completely propagandized. They were all hating their neighbors. If you said that you hadn't taken the vaccine, people would turn on you. Marriages were breaking down. It seemed like they got everyone where they wanted. And then something happened. I think it was actually at the beginning of, it was the beginning of this year, because they actually pushed them through, didn't they? They pushed through some kind of vaccine pass in the UK, at least, in December. 3 weeks later, they revoked it. And it all seemed very kind of, oh yeah, let's pretend nothing's happened here. We're just going to get rid of it all. And it was very weird. Like, I didn't feel that the revoking of the whole, vaccine agenda or the vaccine pass agenda, I didn't feel that happened kind of off the back of, protests and a big freedom movement. I actually don't. I think that governments seem to suddenly be afraid of what they'd been pushing and change course. I wonder if you can speak to that for a minute.
It could certainly be the case. I think the MPs at that time were getting a lot of heat and a lot of questions. A lot of stuff was thrown at them on Twitter saying, you said that this wasn't going to come through. I think the government actually voted to bring those in, especially things like in stadiums and football matches and in large events. So they weren't brought in at a localized level, at sort of small level, but they started trialing these out at large events, outdoor events, and such. But I just don't. I think by then the amount of awareness about them and where this could lead to was quite big, and the MPs knew it. They knew that this wouldn't last. So I think they probably lasted a couple of months. But then you had stories coming out of Wales. There was a cinema, a Welsh small independent cinema. I actually covered them in a couple of stories, Cinema and Co, and they were forced to shut down because they didn't accept the COVID pass. They wouldn't screen their customers. They just didn't comply, but they were fined, and that was a major story. So you had theaters that wouldn't comply with it, and then they were saying, well, we're going to bring it into pubs, for a product. It's the thing is, right, it's exclusionary, so you're automatically denying business, and based on whether you've taken a product or not, or whatever it is, it's discriminatory, and if these people were taken to court, I think they would lose. And so I think that they were scared, and I think Boris Johnson, the cases were going down. They said that we have no need for them, so they pulled them back. But the infrastructure is still there. The technology, they've spent all that money. They're going to maybe repurpose it, use it for international travel only. How about yourself? Do you have to provide that when you travel?
Well, no. I mean, I came to Mexico in about 2000, and it was like about May 2021. So it was kind of off the back of that big lockdown that happened in the winter of 2020, going into kind of spring of 2021. And I was like, I'm gone. Like I can't keep doing this. And Mexico seemed like the most free place, and I came to Mexico, and I've been here basically ever since. But obviously, going between Mexico and the UK, it wasn't too bad. At one point, you needed a test to get into the UK, but you've never needed a vaccine to get into the UK. You've never needed a vaccine, or actually, you've never even needed a test to get into Mexico. Literally, they've never even had a test to come in. There was at one point a little health questionnaire form that you had to just tick a box and say, I don't have symptoms. But it's basically been there's been no requirements. And I found that it's fine. And obviously, there's still some countries. I think Canada now looks like I don't know if they've completely revoked needing a vaccine to go in, or whether they're kind of moving in that direction. It seems like America, which is actually blows my mind. America, supposedly the land of the free, is going to be the last country almost in the world. I mean, maybe there's some others I don't know about in some parts of the world, like Asia and stuff. But it seems like America is going to be the last one kind of continuing with this absolute clown policy of vaccine passports. And, I can't see it coming back, honestly. I just can't see them.
No,
they had one shot and they missed, in my view.
Yeah. I think we caused such a stink. There was a campaign by the #Together declaration, which had a massive campaign against vaccine passes. And I believe that was quite successful. Many of the MPs were on board. Certainly Steve Baker, MP for down south. Can't remember the town he's in charge, but yeah, there was quite a few MPs who voted against. Actually, there was a big turnout of MPs that voted against these additional restrictions, which were not needed, because we were going into Christmas last year, and they were talking about Plan A and Plan B, and Plan B was putting through these arbitrary passes. But personally, for me, because I've been through health issues in the past, I took my childhood vaccines, and in 2006 I cut my finger. I had to take a tetanus jab. I have no problem with vaccines. It's just that since my health started to improve, I've had to look after myself, and so I can't put anything in my body that would interfere with the immune system, because my immune system is crap anyway. So I didn't want it to go into overdrive, become hypersensitive to stuff. It could, my fear was it would inflame my eczema. So I've not taken anything.
Did you fix your eczema issue through the kind of alternative health treatments you were going through?
Yeah, it's helped. So I was on acupuncture. Fortunately, I met a really nice a gentleman in Leicester, where I live. He does traditional Chinese medicine, so he speaks only Chinese, and he imports all the stuff he makes for tea. But it's he can tell a lot from my tongue, and even the color of my blood, because what seems to happen is that the body can't get rid of rubbish, and your blood becomes quite dark. It becomes toxic in a way. Your body becomes toxic, and so it starts coming through on your skin. You get quite hot. The heat in your body as well from different parts of your organs. So it and that can, if you don't have the right balance. So the whole thing about acupuncture is or the Chinese traditional medicine, is to put your body back in the natural state that it was in. So this can be done with the electrical signals in your body and your meridians, and where you put where you can target the acupuncture points. You can increase energy, flowing between the organs, and that's what's done it. I mean, it took a while, and I needed to do it quite regularly. But that, in the combination with like drinking Chinese tea, which is supposed to cool your system, get rid of heat, and I mean, we're electrical beings, and things affect us, and the weather. I mean, the weather's classic. I mean, like, I get flare-ups when the weather changes and stuff. So, you get ill when the weather changes. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I love, the whole alternative medicine thing. I mean, I'm not like really in that world massively at the moment, but
no,
it just, so much of it just makes inherent sense. Like so much, quite often, like with what you were saying there, I mean, I've got, friends who've got really, really severe asthma and stuff, and they struggle with it like terribly. Yeah. And, they go to the doctor and it's like, oh, we'll give you one cream this week and another cream that week. And it's all just like, some cream's going to solve this problem. But then, you tell me something like that you can kind of identify from the color of someone's blood, that will give you signs, or looking at their tongue. And I found this a lot in the alternative health world, that it's like, people actually look at you and go, okay, let's observe this person and see what's going on. Whereas a lot of the time in kind of conventional medicine, like allopathic medicine, people will, the doctor doesn't even want to see you. They're just like, okay, well, based on your symptoms, you need this cream. Based on your symptoms, you need this drug. There's no observing of the person or the human body,
Yeah, I mean, he's done some amazing stuff. I had a headache, and he put a needle in my foot, and that cured the headache. And I've got asthma as well, and it was quite bad because eczema and asthma is quite kind of like overlapping. People with eczema usually have asthma as well. So I've had asthma since I was very young, and he told me that it's to do with your liver, and sorry, not liver. It's your kidneys, and there's too much heat. So give me some tablets, medicine. Did that for about a month. A lot better. So it certainly helps. I think a lot of this stuff is to do with the plant-based, right? So it's all organic from the ground. So it's all herbal.
Yeah, I don't know who the quote was, but "Let food be thy medicine" was.
That's right. Yeah.
Was it actually a medical person? I want to say Socrates or something, but I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, I think you're along the right lines. Yeah. it might have been, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some kind of experiences with alternative medicine. Namely, it's like, well, I've had acupuncture, but I've also had like cupping therapy. And cupping therapy for me is the thing that I absolutely swear by. I've had it on a number of occasions, and I used to get this problem in my back where, particularly in the winter when it was cold, my back would just be in continuous pain. It would just be awful. And the only way to kind of get rid of the pain would be like, it wouldn't be there if I'd maybe been under the covers in my bed for a while. My body was like warm and I would get some temporary relief from it, but it was just painful basically through the whole day. And I actually went for a massage completely randomly. It was some kind of like, I think I won it in a raffle or something. It was something weird like that. Went to like a Chinese kind of medicine place. And I was getting this massage, and I was supposed to have a 1 hour massage. And halfway through, he said, "Do you want to do half an hour of cupping therapy?" And I had no idea what it was. And he was like, "Oh, we kind of do acupuncture, and we use these cups, and we heat them up and stuff." And I had no idea what he was talking about, but I like, I've always kind of liked to just try new things. So I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it. Like, let's see." And he said, "Do you get any pain like on your back?" And I said, "Yeah, basically, I get all this pain in my lower back. I get it all the time." And I had this one session of cupping therapy, which was for half an hour. Normally they do it for at least an hour. And literally the pain completely went away for 2 years. Like, I never got it back at all. It was almost the next day I woke up and it was complete turnaround. And, this wasn't like someone said to me, "Oh, this is going to work." It wasn't like, I can't put it down to just a placebo effect. I mean, even if you can, obviously placebo is still a useful thing, but I can't put it down to that because I had no idea what to expect from it or to expect any kind of change. But yeah, it totally turned me around. And since then I've had it a number of times. And, I really swear by it. I think that one of the things I really hope to see in this new world that we're building, where we're actually, just getting rid of the doctrines of these traditional institutions, is a kind of, I guess, like a renaissance of alternative medicine, or at least the open-mindedness to alternative medicine.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, like, because I felt that I've been let down in the normal traditional sense, because my parents took me to every single specialist you could name. I've been in and out of hospital as a child, and I still remember the bandages they used to put on me. My parents used to put gloves on my hands so I wouldn't scratch. I had a really awful childhood, sort of debilitating, and that probably sort of took its toll on my confidence as well, like growing up and being around people, and that sort of accelerated sort of my OCD as well, because I used to scratch quite a bit, and my you can see on all the skin just falling off. So I'm quite particular now. But yeah, I mean it hasn't gone away, but it's not been cured, but it's been sort of it's manageable and it's in control. I'll give you another example. So last year, my wife was diagnosed with stage 2 bowel cancer in April 2021, and she's not been to Chinese, so only I used to go. And by the way, I had back issues as well, and he's helped me with those as well. Sort of lower back issues. It's kind of like electrical shocks that go up and down. Back issues are quite common, but they can be fixed with acupuncture. So yeah, go back to my wife. She was adamant that she wanted to have surgery to remove the cancer in her bowel. So it was sort of just maybe about 6 inches from the bottom. But they put her on a course of radiation and chemotherapy. Now I've got sort of coming from where I am and praising alternative therapies. I don't really have much confidence in the Western medicine at all. It let me down. I mean, the only thing I probably take is paracetamol, but even that, if you have too much of it, it could kill your liver. So there's all side effects to Western medicine, and so she had no choice to do the radiotherapy and the chemotherapy, which are quite brutal actually. You've got side effects of not being able to have a baby anymore. Your reproductive organs can be fried. You can not just lose your hair, you can have other issues, sort of brain fog and stuff. So I helped to get through this time, and so we started doing fresh juices. So we did every single morning, make a fresh juice of apples, sort of celery, quite green juices, barley powder. So there was massive concoctions of like fresh juices to sort of get her vitamin and minerals levels up, the antioxidants, to try and kick the immune system into play so it would actually fight the cancer itself. So we did like months and months of juicing. We did like vitamins, lots of like high antioxidant vitamins, vitamin C, grapeseed, and all sorts of stuff. And it was a combination of the juices, the vitamins, her going to acupuncture as well and telling the doctor this is what I've got, but she still did the chemo and radio. It was they were combined, and it was a short like 4-week thing, and then she went for further tests and stuff. So by October last year, exactly this day last year, she got the all clear. It had all gone without any surgery, and she's just had an MRI. She just had an MRI last week, and that's all clear as well. So wow, it's all amazing. So and that so the doctor was quite shocked. They go, only 10% of people or something have going through the treatment. Only sort of 10-15% actually have a complete turnaround. Usually it's smaller, but and then you still have to go in and cut it out. But very few percent of people actually have, you can't even detect it at all, kind of thing. So, alternative therapy, you can combine it. You can put in the Western stuff as well. And, hopefully, fingers crossed, keep doing what she's doing. and she'll be okay. But yeah, otherwise it could have turned into surgery. But then surgery then has its own complications later on. This is like 3,000-year-old sort of, traditional medicine, isn't it? This is ancient stuff that it's kind of been, in China, and it's kind of been forgotten. It's, the Western medicines come through with painted in drugs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that the West is very quick to tell someone that they've got something, and it's like, you've got this thing and that's your life now, and now you need this medicine, to deal with it. And in some cases that might be true, but I think in a lot of cases, there's a variety of factors there. It's not just that you've got this thing, and even in some cases, I think that it could be like emotional factors. It might be that your state of mind, the state of mind that you're in, and if you have some conflict in your life that you're not addressing, that can manifest itself into the body as well. And I think that sometimes it's discouraged saying something like that, because it's like, oh, well, you're victim blaming. You're victim blaming. Someone's unhealthy. Someone's got this, that, or the other, and you're saying that it could be because of their state of mind or whatever that you're victim blaming. But it's not really like that. I think that actually it's kind of an empowering thing to say to someone like, look, let's look at the whole profile of someone. Let's look at their health, but let's also look at their mental health. Let's look at the situation in their life. Let's look at whether there's any conflict there, whether there's any trauma there, and healing that. I'm not saying it's going to work in every case, or that it's even a factor in every case, but I do think that there is a intrinsic link there, which is hard to deny when you start looking at alternative health.
Yeah, so the whole holistic journey, you've got to look at everything. And so, yeah, the way we feel, our vibrationals, our energies can manifest in health issues, and sometimes undetected. So as my wife, as an example, not only did we do juicing, but we kept our confidence levels high. We didn't get too down about it. So we did quite a bit of hypnotherapy with her as well. So you kind of you get into a relaxed state, and then you're more suggestive to, sort of change of behaviors and stuff. If you want to, become more positives and stuff like that. So, maybe there was an anxiety or depression, sort of, so he would get rid of that, or, sort of try and program your mind. So it is very sort of mind centric as well. So hypnotherapy, and even like healing stones. So like Reiki, it's sort of, your energy channels and stuff, and just sort of realigning your body. And she's fine. I mean, she's happy, and she's over over the bad hurt, sort of the bad news and stuff. But
that's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, congrats to you guys for getting through that. So I know we've kind of zoomed in on health here, which, with these conversations, I don't normally try to steer it in a certain direction. I just let them be what they are. So I guess let's stick with this topic for now, because actually you mentioned about the terrain theory. That's the word for it, right? And this is something which, if there's one thing that people keep asking every time I say, what topics do you want me to discuss on the podcast and stuff, or the thing that people always want to know about is like the whole concept of like viruses. Do they really exist? And this whole thing. And there's someone who, I've said this in a couple of previous episodes, there's someone who is a really big voice on this topic, who I am trying to get him on the podcast, and he's agreed to come on, and we just can't seem to schedule it in right now. I'm not going to say who it is yet, just in case it doesn't happen. But I'm trying to have a kind of larger conversation about this, because for me, I'm complete noob when it comes to this question of germ theory versus terrain theory. But I'm wondering if you can. It sounds like you maybe are on the terrain theory side, so I'm wondering if you can maybe lay out what that is, and what are your kind of current views on that. By the way, if you're listening on YouTube right now, then this is about to get censored, so be warned for a censorship message. Normally I don't warn for them, but now that the pod is on YouTube, I know when it's going to have to censor. So if you want to listen to this section of the conversation, go and listen on a censorship-free platform, but the censorship message is about to tell you that anyway. This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
I'm always ill. I suffer obviously from a low immune system, eczema, asthma, and so I've always got a cold. I've always got tissues with me, and well, I used to. And every time I used to go to London, people around people's houses, change of atmosphere, change of people, change of emotions, it kickstarts my nose would run. I'll start sneezing. So I'm quite allergic to pets, lots of different things. But then what I've realized over the years is that if you build up your gut health and your immune system, you can actually get stronger. You can train it. And then you can, and if you eat the right foods, and if you lead a healthy lifestyle, they're all good things. You can positively impact your health.
This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
I mean, I've been around people who are sick, and I'm doing fine. And on other occasions, I might feel rough as well, but going back to like March 2020, like I had this was February 2020. This was before the lockdowns. I had the worst flu in the world. I was in bed for about a week. I was aches and pains and stuff, and I was sleeping with my wife, and she never caught it. She was perfectly fine. And I think whatever happened during that time, it affected me. But then after March 2020, for about a good 2 years, I had the best health. I didn't even have any sniffles, all throughout those COVID months, nothing affected me. I never got it. I tested negative every time, and then just the Christmas that went last Christmas, unfortunately, supposedly I tested positive, but I was feeling rough, so I had to cancel Christmas. I had to tell everyone not to come around. So and it kind of just, do we have to do all this? It's just yeah.
This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
I think that there is also such a thing as just being cautious about, okay, well, you could be wrong about this, because that's kind of where I am at the moment with this. I generally believe that, or at least I find it very hard to believe that the medical establishment has all got it wrong when it comes to viruses. I know that there is strong arguments to be made about.
This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
And, that stuff is interesting to me, but I also just think, is it possible to hoodwink an entire medical establishment that, are clearly not all in on a conspiracy? They could all be unwittingly believing a lie, but I find that hard to believe. But yeah, I am interested in this area and interested to explore it more, because as far as I'm concerned, since COVID, there's things I never thought I'd be skeptical about that I now am skeptical about, because I've seen this huge lie of, not that the whole thing is a lie, not that the virus is a lie, but just the scale of it, just the scale of how afraid we should all be. Excuse me. I've seen them try to push this thing and to kind of hype it into an order of magnitude more than it should be, or several orders of magnitude. And so now I'm kind of quietly cautious about things like climate change, right? Like the idea that we're causing that, because I see some parallels there in the way that, for instance, you're not allowed to talk about it, in the way that you're not even scientists aren't allowed to debate it. It's like, one group says, no, the debate's over, we're not allowed to debate it. And, very similar to with COVID, where you see these medical people, it's like, oh, well, if you don't believe that the vaccine is safe and effective, you're not even invited to the table to have a discussion, because, you're an anti-vaxxer. I see similar things happening in the world of kind of climate science and stuff. So I'm kind of skeptical. I think that everything is on the table for me now. I'm open to these things, but at this stage, I haven't looked into it. I'm still, I still believe there was a virus, there is a virus, it is transmissible, etc. But I am, I'm open-minded to having my mind change on that.
So I went up to Scotland in the middle of July, and we went up there for about 10 days hiking. So me, my wife, my young daughter, she's 8, climbing hills and mountains and stuff. And I got ill. It's been in in a different place, in a different environment, it affects my immune system, and I got ill. And so, but I kept on going. We still did all the activities. We had everything booked and planned for. When I got back to Leicester, we did a test. I was negative because I kind of got over it. But my wife was positive. So we obviously had COVID during that time, and we didn't even realize it.
This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
But there's been cases where we've had to take a test, and I've had something else, a cold or whatever, and it's not triggered it. So yeah, maybe I asked the same questions as well, like whatever it's doing the rounds, has it been doing the rounds forever? And we've not really paid much attention to it. But I also believe that if you're going to do something, if you're going to pull this off, there's planning involved, and I do believe that the powers that be understand the way the world works.
This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
You should look into it. Definitely look into it.
Yeah. God, you know what? I really wish that I had time to look into all of these different things. I just kind of feel like now that my worldview has been shattered and literally everything is on the table, I have to narrow my focus somewhat to what I actually look into.
I had to deal with that. I had to get some closure very early on in 2020 to put that aside and then focus on the tech. Because all these things were going on at the same time. You had protests, you had lockdowns, you had vaccine passports, you had all the stuff on the vaccines, and there's still stuff, now the side effects. I mean, I knew from 2009, I was thinking about this because I wanted to raise this with you. That I knew from 2009 when the swine flu scam came through, and lots of people took this vaccine back then.
Right.
This section of the conversation has been censored in order to meet the community guidelines. For the full uncensored version of this conversation, please check the description for links to censorship-free platforms.
I didn't want to talk about vaccines because if you talk about the vaccine, you'll get censored on YouTube, on Twitter. So I don't touch anything to do with vaccine unless it's got vaccine passports in the name. So I've been lucky. I've been lucky on Twitter. I've had a very short 12-hour ban, maybe not last Christmas, the Christmas before, but I've been pretty good because I've been focusing on other areas, on more sort of tech areas.
Yeah, I've been quite lucky as well. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of throttled. My account is very, very throttled. I don't get followers. I don't really get much retweets, given that I've got over 10K followers. My retweets is very, very low generally. But to be fair, I haven't been banned, right? My problem at the moment with doing this podcast is just on when I've just on YouTube, I have to spend a lot of time censoring sections of the conversation. This one I know is going to be heavily censored, and people listening on YouTube is going to be pissed off. They're going to be oh, for God's sake, another censorship message. How much of this conversation have I lost? And that's why I keep saying I'm on YouTube and I'm there. In presence, because YouTube is quite good at getting you an audience. It's great. You've got comments and stuff there. It's got really nice, mechanisms for uploading and scheduling. It's got great features, but you can't talk about the stuff you want to talk about. So that is a shame. But anyway, zooming back out again to the stuff you just mentioned, the vaccine passports and everything and digital IDs. Where are things at the moment as you see them? Because, I've just not been really reading much or looking much into this. I've kind of just moved on a bit from that. I haven't been spending my time looking at what different governments and organizations are doing. So where's the world up to with this and where do you see it going?
Well, currently the situation is, anything that's not quite here, but it's in the pipeline, people are very skeptical over. So you've got various, bills in Parliament. Censorship is one that's actually uniting a lot of people, and the whole PayPal thing came about, banning the Free Speech Union and Toby, was it Toby Young? And so obviously people are quite skeptical about the new currencies that will be coming in within the next couple of years by the central banks, central bank digital currencies, which will overtake sort of fiat cash, fiat money. They're sort of like digital tokens. They can be programmed, so you can only spend it on certain items. They can also be trackable, so immutable to the ledger, so a permanent record of your buying habits. Privacy's gone, anonymity is gone. That's been accelerated over the past couple of weeks. Lots of countries are doing trials. Australia, China, even Iran, they're doing CDBCs, but they're going to be connected to your the digital wallet. So this whole idea around digital identity. Now, digital identity is not just your name, your birth certificate, your things about you, but they've also got things about your skill sets, your behaviors, your whole digital profile online will be in one place, because at the moment it's quite fragmented. You've got accounts with Amazon, accounts with Google, accounts with all sorts of data's in different places, but going on with these wallets, so everything will be connected. Your access to the internet in this new Web 3.0 internet will be via your digital identity, but it's also going to be capturing how much energy you use as well, how much carbon. It's all going towards this whole climate agenda, which is, if you look sort of the next 5 years, you got CDBCs. They're going to be tied to a digital wallet, which has got all your information. You'll use that to get into the metaverse. You'll use that to go online. We're moving towards maybe a Chinafication with the tech. And then you've got other elements in play as well. The universal basic income, they can start rolling that out once the wallet's in place. Government services, every single government services you can think of. There's 300 plus. UK government is signed up to a digital identity scheme. So even if you open a new company, you got to go through this. Even if you start renting, DBS checks, you got to go through this. Everything's going through this digital identity now. It's building up a profile on you. And you're going to be scored. It's kind of like when you get a loan, they have to measure lots of different things, or they have to go through your credit rating. So it's like a credit rating score, but this is going to be a bit more general around your digital persona and what you've done before and what you'll do in the future. So everything was going to be tracked. Like a lot of this technology they trialed in Africa, in places like Uganda, Rwanda, Nigeria, but then they also want to tie the whole financial system will go through that. So your central bank digital currencies, your loans, your customer laws. Yeah.
One thing that I don't quite understand about this huge push for CBDCs, even though obviously I think that's where things will ultimately go. They'll try and bring more and more things into the fray. But why? They already can do that right now. Like all they do is they just get the commercial banks to do it for them, right? Like just like for instance, you've got Ofcom that says you can't say anything bad about vaccines. Why don't they just say to the banks now, okay, well, we don't want people spending this, doing this. If they've got a criminal record, then you have to stop them from doing this, that, or the other. Why don't they just use the commercial banks now? It seems like this whole CBDC thing is trying to kind of achieve something which I think will be like a way, way bigger task than they can, rather than incrementally bringing it about through the current banking system.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with control, because over the past sort of 10, 12 years, you've had cryptocurrencies and you've had Bitcoin and you've had decentralized forms of alternative, and that's what started off from the 2008 crash. People didn't want to put their money into banks and stuff, so they've lost trust in banks, because obviously your money can get devalued, it can be taken away, and so there was a big push for decentralization and privacy. That's where sort of Bitcoin has got its advantages, but now they want, well, the central banks want to rein everything in and have even more control over the economy. This is all about geopolitics, having control over countries. The central bank will then, because at the moment it's the regulator. It makes the money, it creates the money, quantitative easing, and it's a regulator, and that regulator regulates all the commercial banks and sets the rules. But now that relationship will now change. So you'll have current accounts in the central bank. Everyone would have an account with a ledger with the central bank, and they will be able to have even further control and access to data, I suppose.
So is it just a matter of that it's difficult to get a commercial bank to do something which ultimately is better positioned as a government institution because they want to kind of bring in so much data and so much control that it's difficult to get a private institution to do that, essentially?
I don't understand completely, why commercial banks wouldn't, because then you'll probably have lots of different. The thing is about the central bank doing it is because they are the ones creating cash, creating the currency, creating money. I think this whole going cashless society, it's all connected. So banks are actually closing down, and cash machines are disappearing. And there's since COVID, cash is money has been seemed to be a vector for disease spread and stuff. It's all being vilified, and so everywhere you go, we have digital money already. We've got debit cards and credit cards, but this is a system that's like a crypto system, but it will give the central bankers even more control and power, and being able to set interest rates also on those currencies. But then that is a platform in itself also, because that central that wallet you have with the central bank, with the digital currency, that would then could then be used for this whole net zero project as well. So the whole idea around using tracking purchases to see what you're buying is not for your benefit. It's actually for the benefit of society, because what you're buying could be quite carbon heavy. So you'll be encouraged to buy products that are actually have been recycled and stuff. So they want to track this whole thing about carbon in the environment and this whole net zero. So the CBDC is part of this net zero vision.
It seems to me like it's almost just like a 3.0, because you've gone from people trading, maybe in 4.0, because you've kind of gone from people to trading just like, I guess, bartering, and then it's gone to coins, which you have to go to the bank to kind of get the coins, and the bank actually has some control over the money, and then it kind of goes to another aspect where things go digital, and you're using bank accounts, and there's more control there, and the bank says, rather than you just handing cash for something, the bank can say, oh, sorry, like we don't approve this payment, or is this really you, or whatever it might be. And now and it's just like the next upgrade. And I wonder whether actually like it's actually going to be a brand new currency as well. Like maybe this central bank digital currency, that they might just say, well, it's redeemable for your original money, but it's a completely new thing. It's essentially like a fresh currency. We're done with the pound. Now we've got some new thing. I'm not sure how that's going to like really play out, but I think that my view on that whole thing, even though it's all kind of crazy and terrifying in some respects, I just think that governments are never going to be able to pull this off. I mean, governments are so poor at doing almost anything. The idea that they can do probably the greatest feat of technological, not just innovation, but just a whole new system by which we run our lives and stuff. The idea that governments are going to be able to do this is just that it's not going to happen in my view. These are people who are just largely they're just pen pushers and bullshitters. People who are working in government just do not have the kind of, I guess, the skills, or they're just not kind of elite enough on a technical level, on the level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like making things happen, actually, like just doing the stuff, you know? So I wanted to ask you actually, because I know in your Twitter message to me, you said that, you know, you're nervous and that maybe this conversation would see a bit of a different side to you. What is it you're nervous about? Is it the CBDCs and the digital ID stuff, or what are your kind of current thoughts surrounding everything?
I think there's just a general comment. I mean, like in terms of like where I was before, you know, I was quite anonymous on Twitter. For ages, I had like, you know, just a fake picture for a while, and then I put a proper picture on, so to try and connect with my audience a bit more. And then I started doing obviously a bit more stuff with radio. And then I was actually on Talk Radio. I did a 5-minute slot. Yeah, so I'm kind of
on Talk Radio.
Yeah, so I'm not
Great.
a media person. I'm not media savvy or anything like this. So that's where the nervousness is coming from. So because it's doing something that I've haven't done before. So obviously you feel a bit, oh yes, this is new. But I went through some of your previous podcasts, excellent stuff with Rick and Liz. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I was on Talk Radio with Mike Graham for 5 minutes. My claim to fame last Tuesday morning.
That's
so
great, man. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that Talk Radio are actually starting to try to become relevant, because I kind of feel like since GB News became a thing, like Talk Radio just became a completely pointless.
I mean, Julia Hartley Brewer. She called me up on last Monday, Bank Holiday Monday. It was the Queen's. We had a special bank holiday where the Queen was a Queen's funeral. So she phoned me up on that day and to try and get me on to Talk Radio, because there was local issues going on around here. There was like tensions between Muslims and Hindu groups. So things were like kicking off. And I was on the ground and I started covering it. I mean, I don't usually cover local news or anything to do with religion. It's always mainly sort of, you know, future tech and stuff, agendas. But yeah, I got called on. It was pretty good. I had a little slot on there. Rick Munn actually was surprised as well. So I'll send you the video over.
Yeah, please do.
I'll send you the video. It's on my YouTube channel. But yeah, I mean, I've got some people following me. I've got like Matt Letitia. I don't know if you know him. He's a footballer. He follows me. There's a chap called Joe Rogan. He does excellent podcasts.
Joe Rogan's following you?
Yeah. So he's been following me since God.
We're gonna get Seek for Truth on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Well, I hope so. I doubt it. I'm not very interesting.
Yeah. Well, but you're doing really well, man. I mean, you know, like obviously, you know, you say that you don't normally do media appearance and stuff, but actually, like your written stuff and everything you're putting on Twitter and your threads and stuff is great. So, you know, you've obviously got a very analytical brain, and also you're kind of tapping into something which people want to hear. And you know, it doesn't. Even though obviously, like, it does kind of surprise me that Talk Radio brought you on. I think ultimately this is where all of the mainstream media is going to have to go. And I do call them mainstream. Some people might say, well, they're not mainstream media. But yeah, I think that you know, Talk Radio and even GB News, like if they, there's so many kind of independent kind of media, like content producers and stuff now, you know, stuff like TNT Radio, you know, like what Rick's doing and all those guys, like that. They're going to take over. They're kind of just ready as soon as GB News and Talk Radio and stuff. As soon as they kind of fall off the ball, these other kind of alternative media channels are going to just flourish. So I think that actually the fact that Talk Radio brought you on, that speaks to the fact that they obviously feel that burn, that they're like, if we're going to stay relevant, we need to bring people on who people are actually listening to, like real people who people want to listen to, not just bringing on, you know, the kind of the latest shill, but just people who actually have been able to speak to speak to people in a different way and about subjects and topics that they want to hear.
Yeah, there's a fantastic amount of people on Twitter. I think that's my main social media platform. I find it very difficult to manage more than one channel. So,
Same. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I started doing obviously information threads, then converted them into sort of long form articles with all the information I used to cover. So I used to sort of replicate my threads to articles and articles to threads, and then recently, obviously more and more media appearances, such as with yourself and Rick. So I'm on his show next week.
Oh, nice. So am I. What day are you on?
Thursday at 11. Thursday
Oh,
11.
okay. All right. Yeah. I'm on Tuesday, so yeah, I'll be.
Yeah, no worries. I'll catch that. And yeah, so kind of built up this network of like-minded individuals. I mean, they've really kept me sane throughout all of this. So the guys at Truth Talk, so Toby Brown, who runs Truth Talk, the guys at Stop Common Pass, which it's another organization, David Nolan, him and me, we're sort of independent. We're not affiliated with anyone. We're sort of ground up, pretty rough and ready, raw organizations. I think we've got a good group of like-minded individuals who are freedom fighters, but they're doing in their own way. Like everyone's doing bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I mean, we've got bigger celebrities as well. We hosted Stop Common Pass hosted a Twitter space just a couple of days ago, and I was on. Rick Munn was on. David was hosting, and then we had a guy called James Melville. People have learnt that governments can't be trusted, especially when they come out with a big problem. And so
be skeptical, right?
Be skeptical, ask questions.
And this is something which I've seen, which has been quite good to see recently, is this Italian, this new person who's been elected in Italy, and I think that even a year or two ago, when people had more hopium in them, they might have looked at this and been like, "Oh yeah, she's the savior," and they did that for about a day, and then was like, "Oh wait a second, she supports a lot of these things." She seems like not that anti-establishment, basically, but I think that previously people might have clung on to that, but now I think people are beginning to realize, like, if you got elected, the chances are like you're not anti-establishment, because you don't get through, you don't pass through the filter.
The problem is, Johnny, is like you have all these freedom fighters, so-called freedom fighters, and when they come out and say, they support the Queen, and then they get called controlled opposition, because how can you support the royal family when they're involved in all these other activities? But so I mean, the globalists...
I agree. It is mad that whole thing with the Queen and the royal family and everything. It's mad. It's like this is someone, whether like, I'm not saying you should kind of like necessarily hate on the Queen, but she literally paid off her son, who was involved in the whole Epstein stuff, who's clearly a pedo, right? And she paid for that to all go away. And
Prince
then
Andrew.
you've got freedom fighters who are basically saying like, "Oh yeah, how sad! Oh, the Queen, how amazing she is." And I'm like, do you not marry these two? Like, at some point, do you not have to reconcile these two pieces of information that like the royal family are not your friend? And this is my problem with kind of conservatism versus like a genuine, like conservatives. It's like they don't actually, they have very mixed principles. I find like people who just like, "Oh, I'm a conservative." It's like, "Yeah, I'm really anti state and this, that, and the other." And, actually, I think I believe in individual freedom stuff. But then I support this monarchy, and they're involved in all of the exact same stuff. And it's still a complete, it's essentially just welfareism for the super rich. I mean, it frustrates me. But sorry, that was probably an unwarranted rant.
Yeah, so I think we were getting to so people on Twitter calling other people out being not controlled opposition because they support things, such as the royal family, and the like. But but there are things that unite most, a lot of people. There, when something happens, and especially this whole censorship stuff with PayPal, that seemed to get quite a bit of attention, and so that united a lot of people. And a lot of the MPs got involved, and that's the only way we're going to make a difference. Is that I think we've got to, we can't tackle everything. We've got to do one thing at a time. Forget multitasking. Focus on one thing. So it could be the vaccines. It could be the vaccine passports. It could be the mandates. And have proper campaigns and get like-minded people together. And there's many things to come. This whole Ukraine, this World War III about to kick off, and that's it's a whole cost of living crisis. And I think the cost of living crisis is actually what might unite people next, because it's affecting everyone. So yeah, but then we've got to direct our anger in an efficient way. It's okay to get angry, but you've got to do something about it. You've got to make small steps, to try and make life better for everyone. But yeah, I think we're all on this journey. We're all on this journey together as well. And so, we've got to support each other, families, friends, communities, and just stay positive, because even if there are drastic changes coming through, even if they're going to rip out the economic system and put in a new technocracy, where we'll all be plugged into the matrix, we'll have to do it all together. But I've always said, I've got this little thing that always goes into my mind. It's like, maybe we have to assimilate, maybe we'll have to, become AI so we can get into the system and kill it. That's the only way we're going to do it, is to let the truth shine, and elevate our species. But yeah, it's all up there at the moment.
Man. No, I like that. I really like that positivity. That's a good point to round off on, actually. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been great to have you on. Been great to kind of get to know you and have a longer conversation like this. Do you want to just let my audience know where they can find you, and also any final parting thoughts that you have?
So you can find me on Twitter, Sikh for Truth, SIKH for Truth. There's also links through to various videos, my YouTube channel, which is very quiet. But yeah, just my main feed. I try and post out articles from affiliates and like-minded individuals, some independent researchers. So I'm quite supportive of writers, up and coming writers. Trying to get even more involved with writing for Truth Talk. Yeah, so my website, well, it's not my website, it's Toby Brown's website, truthtalk.uk. You can find me there. Always posting up original pieces, original material on Truth Talk. So Twitter, truthtalk.uk, Seek for Truth. Final words. I don't know, I didn't really prepare anything, but yeah, thanks for having me on. It's nice to meet you. You've done some great podcasts in the past. Keep it up. What you're doing is amazing. It's all part of the service that we're all doing in our own bits. It is having an effect, and there's now alternative sources of information. There's long form conversations, and I think podcasts and radio shows are the way to go.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I really appreciate your kind words about the podcast, and yeah, likewise, right back at you. Keep up the awesome work. You're doing really some really great articles and all the rest of it, and your Twitter's kind of really blown up, considering you've only had it 2 years. That's quite an achievement, and I think it's definitely well deserved. So yeah, right back at you. Keep doing the awesome work, and hopefully we'll chat again.
Cheers, Johnny. Thank you very much.
Cheers.